Ah yes, music. The finest of the arts, barring all the others. Such a great form of sound begs an interesting question. What if it could move? Well, music does move, certainly, but I'm talking about a sort of visual movement. Comparing music to other artistic mediums, it holds a unique place due to being fully tied to your ears rather than your eyes. This means the experience of music is unlike any other. Music comes in many different flavors, or genres, each ranging in instrumentation, dynamics, rhythm, tone, harmonies, and so forth. There's actually too many ways to describe music, to the point that some people disagree on the meaning of even the most fundamental words and concepts. But that's a story for another day. For now, all you need to know is that music is a form of art which cannot be easily compared to any other, which of course makes it perfect to complement any other form of media. Most other mediums are visual, like paintings and books. Some mediums, like theater or film, have a relationship with sound already through spoken word. But music also uses spoken word. Mix these mediums together and you've got a cohesive pile of rainbow sludge. From there, it's up to you what it ends up being. Now, earlier I said I wanted to see music move, but I have a small confession. Music's been moving for a long time. From some of the earliest films in the history of the medium, theaters have featured some form of sound on their movies. At first, these were orchestras that sat in giant pits below the movie, playing songs in time to the actions present. Thus, the score of the film was born. A score being a set of songs meant to accentuate the action of a film. Around the 1920s, a crazy invention came into the world. Electric sound! Now, instead of having to perform live music, film had sounds interlaced into its bloodstream, allowing sound to play when intended at all times. Ever since this moment, film and music have been married to each other, going through thick and thin, physical and digital evolutions, and even stereo! Over time, however, their relationship has gone on the wayside, as they both found their separate fame in our culture. So how do we repair these great mediums' relationships? One way is to just sort of, mash them together and hope for the best. Introducing the soundtrack, aka what happens when you let the old couple argue for too long. A soundtrack is made up of pre-existing commercial songs, which are used in place of an original score. The soundtrack began to take form in the 50s, right when rock and roll was becoming hip. You see, film companies used to own their own theaters, but nations like the United States claimed the practice monopolized film, so these companies had to switch tactics. Some companies bought the rights to new songs and artists and used these songs in their movies. That way, people would get out of a theater, go, "Ooh, me likey this sound," and buy songs afterwards, giving film companies more money. More artists saw more money flow, wanted in on the craze, more songs were made, more artists, more money, more songs. Surprise! It's a baby massive media conglomerate. Its name, the Great American Songbook. In a way, film accidentally allowed music to become the cultural titan it is today, all thanks to the soundtrack. Of course, the purpose of the soundtrack has changed wildly over the years. Its current purpose? Capitalize on nostalgia, baby! That's right, it's High Fidelity, a film fresh off the presses of the 21st century with over... Sorry, I just saw how many songs this film has. 52. Is that right? Wait, there's more? 57?! Oh! High Fidelity is definitely on the extreme end of the soundtrack game. A new song could appear every 2 minutes, but sometimes songs shift rapidly between scenes. The film focuses mainly on songs from the 70s and 80s, which ties well into its setting and characters. Rob, the main character, is the owner of a record store and total music snob. Throughout the movie, he needs to confront his elitist ideas about music and accept others' tastes, however awful he believes they are. Obviously, there's more to the plot than that, but for the topic of music, these plot points provide an interesting view on how music can be used to heighten a film's story. Having the music as backing to certain moments and actions helps convey the emotions of a scene without being explicit in dialogue. That goes for all soundtracks, but the music used in High Fidelity was specifically picked for this story. Beyond their use in the plot, having the music be white male rock and roll focused allows the audience to enter the shoes of the music snob himself. Music is ingrained in the fabric of this film, but just as it is used externally, it is also used diegetically, or within the film's world, as music drives the plot. During certain characters' introductions, diegetic music is introduced to create commentary on these characters. In Barry's introduction, for example, the record shop is playing Jacob's Ladder, a somber, quiet song. Barry stops that song and inserts a special Monday morning tape, starting with Walking on Sunshine. Rob remarks that it's the afternoon, while another employee, Dick, fails to intervene on the ensuing argument. Through one scene and 2 songs, the film has managed to perfectly introduce all of these characters, their relationships to one another, and the dynamics between them all without using any exposition. Scenes like this are all over the place. It's not just individual scenes, the entire movie is about creating the perfect compilation album, aka a soundtrack, to the point that Rob explicitly states this fact to the audience near the end of the movie. The film is about music, to the point of being held together by it. There are some complaints to be made about the movie, however, beyond the stalkerish plot the film focuses on. Sometimes the film relies too hard on its boisterous soundtrack, or certain songs might be too blunt for certain scenes. Plus, there are portions of the movie which lack musical variety, or change into certain songs too abruptly. If we ignore the music and the acting, this movie barely holds together. Is there not a way for music to support film without being relied upon so heavily? To put it another way, is there a way to naturally weave outside music into a film, such that its message might be heightened by music rather than held together by music? This might seem counterintuitive, but the easiest way to make music natural in a film is to make it more prominent. The Great American Songbook is no longer a cultural baby. What once relied on film to survive has grown into its own industry and is starting its own life. However, starting your own life is difficult on your own. So the music industry tapped into its daddy's funds just a little bit more. In 1981, the world saw what music had become. Introducing MTV, baby! Music television! If film had been using music to heighten its own experience before, this era of music was turning the tables. Music videos began popping up on MTV. Small videos to promote upcoming albums and artists, which used visuals to support the experience of listening to music. Instead of music moving, it was time for film to start singing. And oh boy, did this new movement not disappoint. No longer contained to standard plot conventions and able to go as crazy as they wanted, artists started creating some of the most interesting short films we've ever seen. Or, just showing music from concerts, that works too. There's a natural question posed by these short film music videos. What if they were feature length? With this question, certain bands came up with incredible films, known as visual albums, like the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night, or Pink Floyd's The Wall. Of course, time has changed, and music with it. So I want to choose a few modern examples of visual albums. I suppose we can start with one of the most successful visual albums of all time. Sound like a plan? You ever heard of Beyoncé before? Yeah, of course you have. She's one of the most popular musical artists of all time. Well, it turns out she's made quite a few visual albums. For this video, we'll be focusing on Lemonade, a 2016 visual album effectively made in response to a cheating scandal surrounding her husband, Jay-Z. Really, that scandal is just context for this album. There's so much more and better ideas in Lemonade once you get past that. This visual album tackles many problems in our current society, such as issues with race, sex, the effects of post-slavery, the modern United States, relationships, religion, and more. Beyoncé chose to string Lemonade together with plenty of unique and interesting visuals, each one with its own purpose in revealing thoughts about the problems mentioned before. As Lemonade is a visual album, what's on screen obviously complements the music too. Actions are timed to music, framing matches the tone of what's playing, and moments without much backing are simpler, while moments with rougher texture or more elements are more sporadic and chaotic than their counterparts. Beyoncé also made a point to use sound effects in the visual album, a staple of music videos, to accent moments without music. These sounds aren't just cobbled together, however. The sounds are often arranged like a music artist would arrange anything else, helping ease each song into the next. Rarely is there silence in Lemonade, allowing the visual album to be one giant music video. Another good example of visual albums is Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer, a concept album set in a dystopian Afro-future where people in power treat humans as computers. Monáe focuses a lot more on the story of her visual album, which allows the album to feel more cohesive. This visual album tackles many problems in our current society, such as issues with race, sex, the effects of post-slavery, the modern United States, relationships, religion. Dirty Computer is actually very similar in subject matter to Lemonade, which gives us a good baseline to see different ways to take on the same idea. Dirty Computer is a lot more blunt with its imagery and lyrics, with more consistent music within the album. However, its story is more disjointed than Lemonade's, due to its way of introducing the individual music videos of the album. In Dirty Computer, an elitist government is wiping Jane, Monet's character's, memories clear, which requires them to make sure they know they're erasing the right stuff. Through this concept, Monet is allowed to basically create whatever music video she wants while remaining in the world she's created. Lemonade treats itself more like a single music video than a collection, so its visuals remain, well, however consistent the average music video is, which isn't much, but they are all cohesive to each other in the visual album. However, Beyoncé experiments a lot more with sound and music in the album than Monet in Dirty Computer. Music frequently cuts out into poetry, which Beyoncé uses to link each song together. Because of this concept, there isn't much of a story, which allows Beyoncé to focus more on the music, while Monet focuses more on her story. That's all not to say that either of these albums are objectively better than one another. Both do an excellent job taking on what they wish to confront, so the better visual album comes down to whatever you prefer. That is to say, though, that both Dirty Computer and Lemonade have wildly varying differences in how they portray the same ideas, which is a testament to how free visual albums are compared to standard films. So, are visual albums the only good way to go when implementing soundtracks into films? I would argue not. The old way of using soundtracks still finds prominence in our world today, through films like Guardians of the Galaxy and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And less modern films that use soundtracks, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Pulp Fiction, haven't been replaced in quality by visual albums. If anything, the introduction of different ways of using soundtracks in films allows for immense variety in how we can tell stories. And there's not a lot wrong with more variety. Music and film have been together for a long time, and each year they're together is another good year for fans of films and fans of music. With that being said, thanks for listening. Watching. Watching? Damn it!